So, we are here to review Six of Crows. Let's get into it. Hey dudes, what's up? It's An Assassin, and today we are here to talk about Six of Crows. Now, I just finished this book a few days ago, and it's good. Now, this is part of a duology. This is the first book in the Six of Crows duology. It is connected to Shadow and Bone, but I believe it is after the Shadow and Bone trilogy, but before King of Scars, I believe. So you don't need to read this book to read Shadow and Bone, and you don't need to read Shadow and Bone for this book. Does it help? Yes. If you really want to understand kind of how the magic works in this world, in Six of Crows world, you might want to read Shadow and Bone, but you don't have to. It's explained well enough to where you get it, but it's definitely more explained in Shadow and Bone. So this book is in, third person? I think, past tense, third person. With each chapter being a different character's perspective. And the first chapter is a character that we never see again, and the last chapter is a character that we've known about, but we've never actually been in their perspective. So it's interesting how this book is taken that way, you know? So it's a whole cast of characters, kind of like a found family situation, and they do a heist. And this book has made me realize I really enjoy heist books. This is a really good heist in here. The characters are very compelling. The story is great. I would highly recommend. I love this book. Of course, there's going to be spoilers in this. But I love this book. I love this book with my entire heart. Now, are there some things that I'm like, kind of? There's a little bit of things that are like, that I didn't like at first, that I began to like at the end. I love this book. This is one of my favorite books of all time. Definitely like top 2. Highly recommend. If you don't want to read Shadow and Bone, you should read this. I'm going to recommend it to literally everyone. And yeah, I really, really love this book. So let's get into it. So let's first just talk about the first chapter, Joust. I feel so bad for him. And I'm not going to go into big boy details. Well, I guess I will. He's dead. Okay? The first chapter, you get introduced to Joust, and he literally dies at the end of the chapter. Or doesn't die, but he gets controlled in the end of the chapter. One of the big, key points of this is, there's this new, Jodar Param, which basically overpowers Grisha, and they can, go through walls and do insane stuff they shouldn't be able to do. And at the end of the chapter 1, you get to see what Jodar Param does, and for Heartrenders, it can mind control people. So Joust gets mind controlled and dies. He actually gets put into a stay position. She says stop, and everyone stops, and he does. So I really enjoyed seeing that, especially then reading later on the Jodar Param and the rest of the story and what happens, especially to one of the main characters in this. So it was interesting to see how that works, especially in the first chapter. And it's interesting, I've never seen you're in a different perspective and the perspective dies first chapter. That's insane. I've seen other different perspectives, in Allegiant, it switches between, is it Allegiant? The last book in the Divergent series, I think it's Allegiant, where it switches between Triss and For's perspective. And then of course Trish dies in the end, spoiler alert. And then you go to For's perspective, which makes sense, which is fine. But to get a perspective in here that literally gets killed off immediately is very interesting to see. And you see it then in the second chapter. Maybe not the second chapter, but one chapter with Kaz in it, where you actually get to see him die. It was like, oh my god, because I immediately liked Joust. As soon as he started to get to know his character, because I liked his crush on a Grisha and not being able to be with her because he is just a low-key soldier dude. And then you see Kaz and he's like, oh, there's a kid with a little mustache, and you're like, damn, that's Joust. You get that, but Kaz doesn't get it, so it's really interesting to see. That and that played out with chapter 1. So like immediately this book got me with chapter 1 because he just immediately killed the character. Like immediately chapter 1 you were like, let's kill him. So I really enjoyed that, and I just had to bring attention to that first chapter. So let's get into the actual characters. Now first, I believe we're first introduced to Kaz, who is my favorite character. He's my husband. I love him. He's my everything. I love him. He's great. He's my precious baby boy. He's like a low-key mob boss, my dude. Interesting things about Kaz. He can't do well with his emotions. he can't talk to people about his emotions very well because he's a mob boss and he can't show weakness. But by the end of this, you really get to see like his low-key feelings for one of the other characters, Ganesh. And he seems to be in love with her, but he can't like do anything with it because he is a mob boss and he can't show weakness. And even the weakness that he does show at the end of it really screws him, and it pushes the plot of the second book forward. So he can't really do that. He's also a germaphobe, I think, like a very extreme germaphobe, which makes sense because there was a flu that he got as a kid, like a sickness that him and his brother got, and they thought he died, so they put him on an island of just dead bodies he was on top of. So, yeah. If you're stuck on some dead bodies that are all diseased and you survive and you just awake on a, mass of dead bodies, I could see why you're a germaphobe. And that's probably one of the most interesting things that I didn't see coming by the end of the book when we find that out. I was like, because there's this whole thing where he wears gloves all the time and people are like, oh, they're all scarred up or they're covered in blood. And there's like just horror stories about like, why does he wear gloves all the time? Because he's a mob boss, so there's stories. And it's really interesting to see that that was like a weakness of his. Like him being a germaphobe is like a really big weakness. And he doesn't like skin-on-skin contact, and that's why he wears the gloves. So it's like that one thing, that one weakness that he still shows that nobody knows about, Like people see the Inej stuff, but they don't know. Besides Inej, and Inej really doesn't know either. She just assumes because, she touches his skin and he's like, he kind of flinches away or whatever. So that's interesting, like, to see, especially, like, I'm a germaphobe, so I really get where he's coming from. I'm not that extreme where I need gloves and stuff, but I really, like, I have a lot of issues day to day from, like, grabbing handles and, like, talking to people and, like, touching hands. And, like, I have issues, but they're not as big of an issue for Cass here. But it's very interesting to see, and I can, feel myself in that issue with his. There's also, he is handicapped. When his first ever like heist he did, he fell and broke his leg and it never healed properly, which is interesting to see here too, because it's definitely not punched in your face that he's handicapped. Like he has a cane and that's very much a part of him. And he does limp and stuff, and people call him crippled and stuff in his, but it's definitely not punched in your face, which I like to see. I like to see representation where it's not stuffed down your throat, because we need representation, but we don't need it like in our faces that, hey, this book has representation, which is really nice. And this book does have representation. There is LGBTQ, stuff in this. That one's very low key, I do gotta say, which is weird. That one is not at all stuffed in your face. Like, it's very, like, read between the lines for LGBTQ here. But being disabled is very much there, which is nice to see, and it's not stuffed on your face. Which is, I believe, is also based off the author herself, that she has something, I forgot what it is, but it hurts to walk, and, like, she needs a cane and all that stuff, so she put what she has, for Kaz, which is really interesting, and I really enjoyed that part of Kaz, and I like to see that, and it's, once again, not stuffed on your face, which I think is a very big issue, especially in movies and TV shows, where it's just, like, stuffed on your face that this is representation, where it doesn't need to be. I think representation can be very low-key and just be, like, it's natural, where you see, like, a white male on TV, you don't just automatically think of, like, oh, look, that's a white male, where, like, we should just, I feel like representation should also be that. Like, representation shouldn't be like, oh, here, like, watch our movie because we have representation. Like, read our book because we have representation. It should just be like, it should just be part of the story, and you shouldn't even have to think about that. And I think that's a very good thing about this book, especially with Kaz. There's also Inej, who is not a white character. I don't know what you would, like, what her, like, our world interpretation of her would be. Because in this world, there's, of course, not, like, she's not Asian, or she's not African American, or she's not Indian. Like, that's not, you know what I mean? Like, there's no comparison, but Ganesh is a person of color, and I believe Jesper is a person of color. I believe Wyland becomes a person of color, which is weird to say. I'm not going to spoil that, but he does become a person of color, which is, like, he gets put, his body gets transformed into a person of color. But he's white to begin with, I believe, and then turns into a person of color. It's weird. I won't go fully into that because it's kind of a huge spoiler, but I'm going to only low-key spoilers here. But yeah, so I really enjoy Kaz, and he's definitely one of my favorite characters, fictional characters of all time. I love him. And I love his saying that, like, he's a monster, but he doesn't need to do every monstrous thing, which is a very interesting thing. And I feel like that's a very cool thing that I actually am going to add to one of my characters in Star Wars. I'm making a Star Wars OC that's very much kind of feels like Kaz. So that was a nice, one of my favorite lines of the book. It was that line. So let's go to Inej. I love Inej with all my heart. I mean, I love all these characters with all my heart, but I love Inej. I love, like, her being an assassin. I'm obsessed with assassins, of course, if you can't tell, because my name is Iron Assassin. So I'm really obsessed with assassins. So I love the whole wraith idea, and that she can climb anything, and, like, her, like, getting away from, she was a slave in a brothel, basically, and Kaz saved her, and that's kind of where the relationship started, and that's kind of how they, like, you know, got a little bit closer or whatever. And Inej is very much a secrets type of person, right? She's very good at finding information and secrets from people, which is really cool to see. But I just love her. I love that she's kind of like the heart of the team and kind of keeps them together. And you especially see that after the end of this book, she gets kidnapped, and that's kind of the main pushing force in the second book. But she's very much the glue that keeps them together. She's probably one of also the most skilled of the group. She's the most intuitive and can really read people, which is really nice. And I just really, really like her. Like, you know, I really enjoy Inej. I really love Inej. But yeah. Then there's Nina. Nina is me also, as I've said. Nina is she was also in a brothel, but a different brothel than Inej. And Inej is more an assassin, while Nina is a Grisha and a heart tender, so she can just see someone and kill them. So she's kind of the muscle. Like, she's not the muscle, but she's kind of the muscle in the group. And she was not actually a prostitute, though. She just made people happy. And basically, you would pay her to, like, change your pheromones so you become happy, which is an interesting use of Grisha power, which I never thought about, but that's one of the things in here. She is part of this brothel when you meet her, but she's also part of the Dregs, which is the group that Kaz runs, or, like, Kaz runs it, but also he has someone above him. And they all have, like, the Dregs tattoo besides Inej, because she didn't want to get tatted, because she already had a tat from her brothel time. So Nina had both tattoos of the Dregs and her brothel time. But we see her join the Dregs and join the mission that Kaz is going to go on. And she's a very key part of the story, especially at the ending there. She also but she, in this book we see it, but she had met a Fjordan in this, and that's a very key part of the story, that she has issues with the Fjordans, and she was from Ravka, and she was, like, in the Second Army, which is the Grisha army, and she's very, you know, skilled at heart tendering, but is not so skilled at tailoring and all that stuff. And especially at the ending, she saves the day and uses Jodha Param, and it's really bad, and it's really freaked out. And I teared up. But I love Nina. She's also, I don't think she's, like, overweight, you know, but I think she's like a bigger person, I believe. That's what they kind of infer in here, which is really nice to see because, of course, I am a bigger over person. I am a bigger person, so it's nice to see like her do that, like be also a representation as that, and it's not like she's not mocked that way. She's also very confident in herself, which I love, and like Matthias is always like, you're so like scandalous, and she's like, yeah, I know, and he's like, damn, I love that. So I do love Nina's character, and I love her like confidence and all of that, and I love her struggles, and especially her hero saving the day at the end there is amazing. So then we get to Jesper. Now Jesper is like the sharpshooter of the dregs. He's also a big boy gambling issue that comes into play at the end there, and it really sucks because he accidentally tells another mob boss that they're going on a little money making scheme, and it's Kaz's old guy, is Kaz's like mortal enemy, and it was like, oh my god. But Jesper is bisexual, maybe? It's not clearly stated like what he is, but it's definitely stated that he likes girls and guys, which is cool because he also seems to like Wylan, and it's really cute, and the interactions between him and Wylan are adorable. I like Jesper. I think he's definitely up there in my favorite characters. I think the only characters that I lower are like Wylan is probably lower, and Matthias is lower, but I think Matthias is better than Wylan. But Jesper is definitely up there too, and he's kind of the only one that actually has like a family to go home to, which is interesting to see, while everybody else has like a family that they can't go home to. But I do like Jesper. He's also kind of cocky, and like him and Nina are kind of like back and forth with each other, which is also cute and interesting to see in the Fawn family. Yeah. So then there's also Wylan. Now, Wylan actually has dyslexia, so he can't read. He's really good with numbers and all that stuff, though. He also changes his face at the end of the book, which is interesting, and, like, Jesper freaks out about it. And Wylan's like, oh, what do you even care what my face looks like? And he's like, oh, but I thought I like your cute face. And it's really cute, their interactions. But I definitely, like, Wylan's alright. I think he gets better in the second book, because in this book, you actually don't get a perspective on Wylan. There's literally, I don't believe there's a single chapter here that is Wylan chapter. Like, you don't get his perspective. But in the second book, you do. I definitely start to like him more in the second book and then the second book. But he's definitely still a good character. Now, there's also Matthias. And I did not like Matthias at the beginning. He's a Fjordan Druskella who basically hunts Grisha and think that they're horrible people and want to murder them and think they're not natural and all that stuff. But he and Nina were on a boat because he captured Nina, but then the boat capsizes, Nina saves him, and so he kind of falls in love with her, and then he has this big old dilemma of, like, loving her, but also, you know, being a Druskella and having a mission, and also she may or may not have sent him to jail, and all that stuff, but, yeah. So I didn't like him in the beginning when he was all rough and angry and all that stuff, but I definitely did start to like him by the end of it, when he kind of got into his character and kind of realized, like, what's up with the Druskella, and maybe they're not so good. So I definitely like Matthias also. So, of course, the villains in this I also really hate, which is a good thing, right? Unlike the Darkling, who I hate to hate, who I literally hate and want to burn in a fire, these villains are very interesting. Like Pekka Rollins, who is, the person who conned Kaz and his brother, so he hates Pekka Rollins. I hate Pekka Rollins, and you see his, you get his perspective actually the last chapter of the book. And also Brum, I hate Brum, who's the one that's like kind of the big boy of the Druskella and really manipulates all the Druskella to believe that you're all criminals, even though the Druskella kind of use them as slaves, and the Druskella don't really believe in that. So I hate them. I really hate them, but I hate them like I like to hate them. Unlike Darkling, who I just burn with a passion hate, while these guys, I'm like, oh shit, they're really good villains, you know? So I had a really fun time with the story. I literally was like freaking out and like super happy when their mission actually went according to plan, and they were all screaming and happy and joyous, and it was so fun. And then of course they ripped it from us and had like them all get captured, and then Nina had to use Jordan Param, and then I was crying and I was like, oh my god. And then when they finally went to go get their money, and they had expected it coming, and I didn't see that coming, and then they had Wylan, like, transform into the guy that they were going to give away so they could get the money, and they transform him, and the dad was like, oh my god, that's my son, I don't care about my son. And it was like, oh my god, the story's just so good, and I was crying, and I was laughing, and I was having a fun time, and it was so good. So then there's also the ships in here that, of course, I can talk about because I am a ship person. So there's Kaz and Inej, and I love them. They're so cute. They're probably the least, like, they're like the closest in ships, but they're also the furthest away, which makes no sense. But if you really think about it, like, they're super close because they've always worked together and all those things, and they've developed a relationship, and, like, Kaz in the book always says that that's my wraith, like that she's mine and all these things, and it's really cute, and it starts to get into a forefront at the end when they have to go to the ice court, and like, you know, and Ned starts to realize like her care for Kaz, and her heart is pointing to Kaz, but then she touches his face and he kind of recoils, but he stays there because he doesn't like skin on skin contact. So it's like there's this whole question, especially at the end there, is that like, can Inej and Kaz be together, and like, can Kaz overcome his skin on skin contact fear for Inej, because, you know, she's either gonna have Kaz 100% or she's not gonna have Kaz at all. She can't have him at 50%. So that's a very interesting dynamic. They're probably the most interesting dynamic in this book, of relationship wise, for me at least. Even though I do ship all the ships pretty high, and they're all kind of equal to each other. But I think the Kaz and Inej is probably the most interesting of the relationships, just because of that dynamic. So next there's Nina and Matthias, and they're actually the ship that's together, kind of, a little bit. Now, because Matthias was part of the Juskela, he had captured Nina, and Nina saved her life. I've told you this. And they go through it, the backstory in this, that they were together for like 3 weeks trying to survive in the cold and save each other's lives. And then finally they made it to a village, and Nina sold him out. And it's been this whole thing that he's been stuck in a prison, the worst prison in the world, Hellgate, because of Nina. So he was blaming Nina and went to kill her, and like he was going through all these traumatic things of dreams and stuff, to where he couldn't decide if he wanted to kill Nina or did he love Nina, and there's this whole big thing. But then finally we get to see that Nina actually like lied about him and like didn't mean for him to get in Hellgate, but she did it for a good cause. And there's a really back and forth of like, is Matthias gonna betray them? Because he's like, at first he's not doing it for Nina, he's doing it for Nina to go to jail and to kill Nina, and he's doing this to get back into the Juskela. But by the end, he is doing this for Nina and cares about Nina, and they've bonded, and it's really cute. And I like their ship. I love it. I ship it. But it's just very much of a, like, it's an interesting back and forth, right? Again, of like Kaz and Inej, but this one's very much more like they have romance there. But then there's just this question of like, who are they going to betray each other or not? Because at the beginning they seem like they're going to kill each other, but then by the end they're not going to kill each other, and it's very interesting to see. So then probably the lowest key ship in this whole entire thing is Jesper and Wylan. Now, they only flirt with each other, but it's so cute. Literally, I immediately was attracted to them and like shipped them because of the boat scene. Wylan tells Jesper to close his eyes, and Jesper's like, you can't kiss me from down there. And that was the moment I shipped them. And it was really cute. And they're definitely the least ship in here, being that they just flirt and there's no actual like romance there yet. But I assume by the end of the second book they'll get into that like romance, which is really nice. So they're a low-key ship, of course. I still ship them as hard as everybody else, but they're definitely not quite there yet as a romance standpoint. So that's basically all I have for this. It's literally one of my favorite books of all time. Like, I couldn't recommend it enough. I love this book. It's just really interesting that I don't like Shadow and Bone so much. I literally hate Shadow, especially before reading this and finishing Ruin and Rising, I was like, okay, I just don't like the Shadow and Bone series. Like, it's not that good. But then reading this and being so in love with this book and like seeing what Leigh Bardugo can do, I hate Shadow and Bone. Shadow and Bone is not a good representation of what Leigh Bardugo can do. This book is. This book is amazing, and it's so good, and like it does not meet the standards of what Shadow and Bone set. Like, Shadow and Bone put my, like, love for it, like, so low. I was so unprepared for the greatness of this book, and I'm really appreciative of this. And I think I'm going to get the tattoo. So there's this like, bird tattoo, if you can see, with the cup. I think I want this tattoo, and I want it to have the I am become blade that Mal has, and then I also think I want the I was made for you here, the one that Matthias says to Nina. I think I want that there, like, I was made to protect you until death or whatever. Because I just love this book, and I love the little, like, can you see the wig shining? And, like, this book is just so good. If you have time to read a book, read this book. It is literally amazing. Heist books are so good. I've never understood that heist books were that good, but they are. This book is amazing. Highly recommend. I'm reading Cookie Kingdom right now and going through that. Cookie Kingdom is about a 500-page book, which I've never read that many pages in a book before, but that's fine. That's okay. I'm okay with it. But you need to read this book. This book is amazing. All the cast characters are great. The storytelling is great. It's just amazing. And yeah, I hope you did enjoy. Don't forget the subscribe button with your pulse of us. Become part of AU Avengers Unlimited, and hit that like button with your hidden blade. And don't forget to hit that bell notification so you know when I upload. Now, definitely comment down below, like, what do you think of this book? Do you like Shadow and Bone? Do you like this better? Do you like that better? Do you like Leigh Bardugo? Are you reading King of Scars? Definitely also comment down below any book recommendations, any other books you want me to read. Or definitely tell me some more heist books, because I really love heist books after reading this, and I want to get into some more heist books because I don't. Once again, this is my one and only heist book I've ever read. And yeah, I'll see you dudes later. Bye!